You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Playoff time in the NFL. Here's how it works. The playoffs feature 7 teams from each of the AFC and NFC divisions. The division winner goes straight through. That's the Baltimore Ravens from the AFC and the San Francisco 49ers from the NFC. And in what are called the wildcard games, 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, and 4 plays 5. So in the AFC, the Houston Texans have comfortably accounted for the Cleveland Browns 45-14. Last year's Super Bowl winners, the Chiefs up against the Dolphins in Kansas City. Currently, the Chiefs ahead 7-0, but they're still in the first quarter. Bills, Steelers and Buffalo. That game's been rescheduled because of a snowstorm in Buffalo. In the NFC, Cowboys, Packers, Lions, Rams, and 2021 Super Bowl winners, the Buccaneers, against the Eagles in Tampa. Let's bring in US-based NFL writer Arif Hasan. You can check out his excellent work at wideleftpost.substack.com. As mentioned, Arif, the Buffalo Bills-Pittsburgh Steelers game's been rescheduled. How bad's the weather in Buffalo?
It's pretty bad. The snowstorm is going to be pretty intense. They're primarily concerned about the really high winds. It sounds like gusts up to 50 miles per hour. I unfortunately don't know how to convert that into kilometers off the top of my head, but pretty significant winds, and it could create issues for emergency services. The last time a blizzard this bad hit Buffalo, over 100 people unfortunately lost their lives. So there's a travel ban. I think that makes sense. So they've moved it to Monday when the winds aren't going to be so high.
All right. Well, I didn't get you on here just to talk about the weather, but apparently it's freezing in Kansas City as well, is it?
Yeah, it is a -1 degree, again, Fahrenheit at kickoff. And I guess the wind chill brings it down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't remember a playoff game this cold in the last 5 years, although I did attend one in person back in 2016. It's a pretty intense scenario.
Of the teams that finished 5th, 6th and 7th, and we just mentioned the Browns have been well beaten, the Dolphins currently taking on the Chiefs, the Steelers, and then in the NFC, the Eagles, the Rams, the Packers. Who feels most likely to you to cause what would be an upset in the wildcard games?
Oh, boy. I think that, given how weak the NFC seems, I think that there's entirely a possibility that any of the 5, 6, 7 teams in the NFC have that opportunity. I think that, for example, the Packers, they've been playing some pretty good football. If they get that defense together, I think the Packers have the ability to cause some pretty big damage. And then, the Eagles, the previous Super Bowl winners, they have had a lot of issues on offense. They'll need to get things together. But yeah, I think that that's kind of where you're going to get a lot of that. If the Dolphins pull out this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, they were seen for a long time as one of the best teams in football. The fact that they didn't win their division was kind of just a late season surprise, but I think that they still have, that capability.
When it comes to playoff football, does defense win championships? Is that a rule in NFL as it is in a lot of other sports?
That's what they say. Historically, the data hasn't borne that out. Generally speaking, it's a little bit better to have a good offense than a good defense. It tends to be a little bit more consistent. It's not as prone to things like injury. They have the ability to solve problems a little bit faster than defenses do. But teams like to have that kind of ethos, like to think that they're tough, and so they'll say that. But historically, offenses have mattered a little bit more, although the teams recently that have won the championship have been good on both offense and defense.
Is the Super Bowl winner traditionally one of the divisional champions? Do we need to look closest at the Baltimore Ravens from the AFC and the San Francisco 49ers from the NFC?
They tend to have an easier path. Very often it's the top seed that gets in. The fact that they don't have to worry about elimination in that first round is pretty meaningful. Home field advantage is pretty meaningful. But, more often than not, it just in terms of pure betting odds, the other teams enter the Super Bowl more often than the single top seed. It's just that the top seed has the best chance. But when you're evaluating against the entirety of the field, anything can happen. There's a lot of parity in the NFL. Single game series are really difficult from a playoff perspective to be consistent in. So while I do think the 49ers and the Ravens do have the best chances of getting in, I think that it would be pretty unlikely to see the two of them face off against each other, given all the other possibilities.
Arif, how important is experience when it comes to these playoff games? Players, coaches, others involved in the football teams who have been there before and had playoff pressure before. Is that important?
Again, historically, it seems to have been pretty important. We just saw C.J. Stroud pull out an incredible win against the Browns. So obviously it's not dispositive, but, we haven't seen a rookie quarterback win a Super Bowl. I think that that's pretty meaningful. In fact, a first-time playoff participant winning the Super Bowl is really, really rare in NFL history. So it does seem like, that kind of experience is important. When you talk to players about, what that experience brings, they tell you about how different the playoff atmosphere is, how different the Super Bowl atmosphere is, and how you need to prepare differently for those kinds of things, and it seems like that plays out.
This week we saw six-time NFL champion Bill Belichick's 24-year tenure as coach of the Patriots come to an end, his worst season in 29 years as an NFL coach. But what will Bill Belichick's legacy be?
I think a lot of people would fairly consider him to be the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, and I think that there's a lot of really good evidence for that. I think that the way that people talk about him, they talk about him in terms of the way that he instituted a fairly uniform team culture, the way that he always has an encyclopedic knowledge of football, and that's all fair, but his impact on the way defenses in the NFL are designed, we still don't know. It's so enormous that it is filtered into every NFL defense. There are stories about how legendary his defensive game plans are in various Super Bowls. In the way that he has changed the way defenses play football is meteoric. And so even though we know of him as somebody who has, some of the highest win rates in NFL history, we know him as somebody who is really aggressive about, a particular type of scouting or a really particular type of offensive design. What's really going to stand out is that he's going to impact defenses for as long as football will exist.
How likely is it that he'll turn up somewhere else?
I don't know. That one's actually a really interesting question. There's some rumors linking him to the Los Angeles Chargers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm really curious about that. I think that he doesn't want to give up. I think that he's going to turn up somewhere else, most likely in the NFL, but it wouldn't, 100% shock me if we saw, him in college, especially, maybe he'll end his career at like Navy or something where his father taught him how to coach football. So there is a possibility. It's hard to envision, but it really does seem like he'll end up on an NFL team somewhere.
All right. Who you got winning Super Bowl and on Super Bowl Sunday, Feb 11, Feb 12?
Yeah, I think to me, I just really like the Baltimore Ravens a lot. They're the most complete team in the NFL right now. They've got a really good offense that's really hitting its cylinders. And then their defense has been really impressive. And I think that there's not a lot of teams right now that have good units on both sides of the ball that really feel like that they're reliable. And so to me, I think I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens.
All right, just before you go, my 16-year-old son, Minnesota Vikings fan, he asked me to ask you if they're going to win it all next year. What do I need to tell him?
To keep hoping. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah, the height of optimism. Hey, thanks, Arif. Great to chat to you. Thanks for joining us across New Zealand.
Thanks for having me.
All the best. Arif Hasan there. You can read him, his excellent work on his Substack account. It is wideleftpost.substack.com.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.
This week on the Between Two Beers podcast, we're talking to former All White and All Birds co-founder Tim Brown about his challenging year in business, the realities of being a co-CEO of a billion-dollar company, and all the best stories from his journey from a Wellington flat to worldwide footwear industry leader.
I remember being at dinner in London and people would go around, oh, nice to meet you, we're making new friends or whatever. What are you up to? People would say, oh, I'm doing this, and this. And then it'd come to me and I my body language would all wrap up and I'd go real small and I'd squeak out like wool shoes.
Between Two Beers. Listen on iHeartRadio or anywhere you get your podcasts.